Hi everyone, my name is Samir Singh Jaini and I'm part of the Digital 5 team. And welcome to slightly cryptic session. I know normally our sessions are more business oriented. We do sessions on open banking, lending, and all of that. And those all these sessions are typically more and more business oriented. This one we thought that it is an issue in the market where everybody wants to understand how the business can happen on open APIs and OCEN and all, but very less focus is there on kind of security you need to sort of get this all right. So that's been a huge problem in the market, and it's not. I'm not trying to talk from a generic view perspective. It's very peculiar. I've had cases where, and I have been a CTO in my life, and I have been on the other side for a long time. I found it very difficult to communicate to people that business and technology are highly interlinked. And when you talk about technology, you're talking about security along with it. So you can't say that I need these features and I will not need any security. And a lot of times the business heads would always come back and tell me, Samir, वो सब मुझे पता नहीं है. I don't care about any of these. I want to go live, doesn't matter. So the processes are typically sort of bypassed, activities are bypassed. A lot of time, the security teams are not part of the change request process. I think one of the things which we have learned in our life is that ensure that any change, any process is always aligned to the security team. All the processes, I mean, your business team should know the basics of cybersecurity, how to ensure that we don't make those typical mistakes. And also your technology team. A lot of times, technology teams are not building the platform around security. Just build it, right? They have been given a target to do coding, and then post facto we do audits, and during audits we find faults, and those faults are figured. I mean, I think it's a I would be honest, it's a callous way of doing it. Not that I've not practiced it myself. It's not easy, right? It's not easy to communicate to the developers how to go about doing it, and ensure that they understand that everything has to be sort of taken care of from a security perspective, process perspective, and all of that. So this session itself is talk about cyber security in the context of open banking, OCEN, and of course, account aggregator framework as well. Many of these entities, as of now, which is the banks and others, may not have opened their frameworks to third parties because they never needed to, right? So if I'm an old world entity and I don't want to share my data, so be it. I will not share. Now, if you want to log into my platform and use it as a screen scraping, so be it. I'm not looking at it. I'm looking at it from my database, my structure, my customer, and the world is dramatically changing. So I think that is the context of the session. What we will do, I will be taking this first part of the session, which is the easier part of the session, which is to say what the context open banking is and stuff like that. But then Shashank is the expert on the security side. He has been in this business for all the years. So interestingly, he's been on security and open banking both, and so therefore he will take a session on how do you sort of establish it as a structure. So I think that's the way we will do it. So within say around 35 to 40 minutes, we'll end our session, and post track that we will have 20 minutes of question and answers. My request is you can all share your questions back to us on the chat. We will read it and we will ask those questions. You don't need to sort of, and we will wait. We will definitely spend 25 minutes on those question and answers. We are not going to go away. So that's the intent, 1 hour session, and that's how we are structuring it. Maybe I'll before we go ahead, I think let me just get the deck out. Yeah. So as I said, friends, my name is Samir Singh Jaini, and I'm part of the Digital 5 team. And Shashank is my other co-founder who is heading consulting. And so quick background about myself. I have been so-called business come, product come, sales plus come, tech guy all my life. I have done strange roles all my life, which is I was heading digital around 2 decades back in city when the digital was not even a prevalent thing, and we were doing interestingly in those point of time we were doing digital certificate implementation, and we're doing host integration along with those signatures. We used to have this application called MTMS, which was again having digital signature end to end. We were in that stage, and post that I've worked with multiple entities, including Infosys, Wipro, Kotak Bank. I was one of the founding team members of Kotak Bank as well, setting up their digital practices as well, and few more digital banks in US and Europe. Last role was as DCB CTO. And And some of the experiences would be more linked to whatever I experienced. And 3.5 years, or now nearly 4 years, we've been running this firm called Digital Fifth. We will explain about it later. Quick introduction from Shashank, your side, and then we'll start.
Yes, Samir, thanks. And as Samir was saying that I have seen both the side of the cybersecurity. One where I used to tell application team what to follow on the cybersecurity, and other side I have followed being an owner of the applications. So I've seen both the side. So I started my journey with L&T Infotech, and been taking care of the cybersecurity security management there. And in fact, there when we there we did the at that time the largest ISO 27000 implementation in India. And then I moved into Wipro, where again I was responsible for the security and technology advisory services, working predominantly in BFSI segment and India and Middle East. And after that, been with the DCB almost 8 years. There I was responsible for governance and compliance, and then taking over the infrastructure management, and then digital banking. And then as a part of the digital banking, last assignment, I set up the entire open banking stack. And now for last 1.5 years, I'm with the Digital Fifth and taking care of the consulting.
Thanks, Shashank. So we'll quickly jump into it. Quick introduction about the firm itself. We have been focusing on changing the way money moves. That's our key objective. And we work across multiple areas on consulting, partnership, and training. And given that we've just introduced ourselves and our third co-founder, which is who also has a deep experience on sales side. 3 of us run this firm along with a small bunch of young guys. We are almost 12 right now. And we have experience of setting up NBFCs, setting up banks, setting up fintechs. We have sort of that kind of experience. So some of it is linked to that. Overall, what we do from a consulting side, we provide almost like consulting from a CTO as a service, sometimes business side as a service. Sometimes we have even run a CEO as a service for a few entities. But idea is that we give consulting to banks, fintechs, NBFCs, how to set up digital businesses. We don't operate out of digital space at all. We do a lot of work on partnerships. So we organize events. We organized last year India's largest event called India FinTech Award. And also we do a lot of activities around that, sales engagement. So we run mandates of many fintechs and many software platforms in the country and taking them to the customer and getting the deals done. So this is more on the partnership side. And then of course we do investment support and fundraising for very specific entities. And of course, on the training side, we are maybe the largest player in the country. On the fintech side, we have trained almost 2,600 people in the country on various aspects of fintech, open banking, cybersecurity, digital banking, other stuff. So that's largely the space we operate in. Within the security space, we work with a lot of entities around information security policies, DR planning. I mean, DR planning, I think we would believe, I personally believe that Shashank is amongst the best I've seen. And of course, a lot of certification, regulatory compliance, RBI compliance are very, very critical. And we are sort of helping many entities on RBI compliances as well. VAPT, security assessment, all of that is part of it. And of course, we do a bit of work on awareness and trainings as well on that. So that's largely because, again, it's important that you understand that we are not talking in a thin air. It's not a PPT which we are doing. It's a practitioner's view. Nowhere we will talk about random stuff at all, right? And there's a set of customers which we have across the breadth of the country, right? So we work from fintechs, banks, NBFCs, NPCI, a lot of other entities within the country and few outside India as well. In terms of trainings, I think one thing is which is just lined up, cybersecurity, which is just round the corner next week. Otherwise, then we do a lot of trainings on open banking, digital lending. So they're all planned for. If some of you are interested, very happy to have you on board. And these are one of the most sort of in-depth trainings ever. I mean, has been made available ever by anyone in the country. Let's move on. I think let's move to the agenda itself, which is how the whole cybersecurity is working out in the world of open APIs. And how, let's say, in case of account aggregator or OCEN framework, how it will be impacted. Some basic stuff we will talk about in this specific session. And I think we know that earlier avatar, I would be honest that 15, 20 years back when we were setting up the whole piece, we never have had open APIs, right? We knew that we were always talking within the ecosystem. So banks backend system or NBFC's backend system and front-end system. Earlier, we did not even bother about beyond. It was our own branches operating on our system. Then we added a layer of internet banking, and then we added a layer of mobile banking. But it's a new world where you are interconnected. Every one is connected on the API piece. So I think as World Economic Forum says so, that this is the area or turning point for cybersecurity. The kind of issues you will face now, we will not have faced because everybody outside, the employees are working from outside, and of course, the customers also expecting more and more transaction online. So this is likely to be case because sudden transition, sudden employees don't know all many of these practices, and of course, customers are finding it difficult. So this is the year of tough change. And of course, this has to be contextually aligned, right? Which means that in the current environment, which is all about open APIs, right? So we are saying there's the internet sharing economy. This sharing economy is getting bigger and bigger. From a business model perspective, when you look at partnership, the first thing, and in fact, we are right now doing from partnership between entities, the first statement of partnership is what kind of APIs we have. It does not even go to the business discussion. It just says that you have it or not. If you don't have it, we will not even talk to you. So to be honest, there are in the parlance of fintechs, they don't go to a set of banks which are very static and may not have enough APIs to support the ecosystem, right? So very clear when larger entities think that they have a chance to figure out what it is, but I think fintechs also are operating in this domain that they talk only to those who understand their language. Otherwise, what will happen is that business-wise, there will be good discussion. I remember 4 or 5 years back, we always used to have good discussion, but never into the business because finally you need a bunch of APIs, which is a plethora of APIs, which is packaged well, secured well before you offer to the market. You can't say, I have a IMPS API, I'm ready. It doesn't work like that. So there's a model which is coming up where multiple entities are working together. Third party, so you are not just, so think about it. You are integrating with third party and offering them service. You're also integrating on your backend side. Maybe if you're doing co-lending, or maybe you're offering third party products as well to your customers. And all of them do, all banks, all fintechs, everybody does it, third party products as well. So how do you ensure that mixture is there? You may also need third party APIs from let's say a KYC process. Now, today in KYC process, you need to talk to an Authbridge, or you need to talk to a Glib, or you need to talk to a Karza API to figure out who the customer is. That is a part of the process. You need to ensure that front, back, and sideways you are also integrated. So that's where the world is. And we are moving to a platform-based approach, which means that you can't be a B2C, a direct to customer or direct to business. You have to be between. You can be a B2B2C or B2B2B or somewhere in between. So you need to have multi-parties talking to each other rather than the old world where you could live with just a standard framework, right? So that's where the world is heading right now. And just it's a pictorial representation of the same framework. You have a bank, you have to have an API layer, and then you need to have your own API and open APIs around customer information or payment or a lending or anything else which you have. And then on top of that, you will have fintechs. On top of that, corporates also, right? Corporates, should corporates have to go to your corporate internet banking, do transactions? I think that world is all gone. It's completely gone. I don't think today a customer is willing to go to your platform and do transaction. Shashank, am I audible?
I think you may just switch off your video. In between, we are facing some challenge.
Oh, sorry about that. I just realized. Yeah. Okay. And so in this particular case, what we are realizing is that not just fintech, even the corporates are looking at direct integration with you. Retailers are looking at direct integration. Everybody is saying that I will not go to your platform, your channels. You please integrate with me. And these are my frameworks. Zoho integrates right now with banks. So you need to be working closely with the customer perspective rather than say, I have my channel, I have my framework, I'm the fintech, I'm the MDFC, come to me. I think that those days are completely gone, absolutely gone. And therefore, I think where the world is heading where you need to have your own API platform. You need to have your own core infrastructure along with the ESB framework. But on top of that, you need to be able to support multiple platforms. And therefore, to sort of start this process, you need to be in a security first approach. With this, the easier part is over and tougher, as I said, starts right away. So over to you, Shashank, for sharing your perspective on security first approach, what it is. We have heard about API first. We have heard about other things, but we have not heard much about security first approach. What is it and how does it work?
Yes, I just requested for control.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Amir, and thanks for setting up the context. So, guys, couple of slides. I'll just try to go deeper into the more of the use cases of Open API and see that how the cybersecurity landscape is changing. Now, cybersecurity in itself is a very wide area, lots of challenges, lots of the controls. But right now, we are trying to focus more on this context of the Open APIs in this. So before we getting into that, what are the frameworks are evolving and how the entire landscape of the open banking and the open APIs are changing, let's look at that where the challenge comes up. So we're just trying to demonstrate one incident which has happened a couple of years ago, and you all might be aware or not aware, but that's a one incident has happened. And where that any communication when happen between the two party is all about the request and response. So somebody is requesting certain response and the other party is supposed to send that response, and that based on that response that of the first party is expected to take certain actions. So here it was an incident which has happened where on the ATM switch, which was acting as an interface between the ATMs and the core banking. And what happens that in the whole the transactions, the switch is expected to receive a response from the core banking after authenticating the customer. So once a customer is authenticated, it goes to core banking and checks that whether the fund is available, is amount is available, what is the limit, and based on that, it sends back the message to switch that yes, the information is available, the money is available, and then allow the ATMs to withdraw the money. So then ATM switch sends the message back to the ATM. In this situation, it happened that malware was implanted on the switch infrastructure, switch server, and the switch malware has taken over that message communication which was taking place between the ATM switch and the core banking and the ATM. And what used to happen that the ATM switch, when it was communicating with core banking, rather than waiting the core banking to send the response back, ATM switch started sending back the response to ATM, and it has started sending the communication as a confirmation. But the story didn't end here, because as we know that normally the banks do the configuration that at the switch level, they do the configuration that, okay, every ATM withdrawal will have per day kind of the 25,000 or 40K, whatever the limit is been set. That malware completely reset that configuration and allowed it to maximum withdrawals. So that's where the combination of attack has happened. And it was really a complex malware that which was implanted. Now taking that this whole story forward, where that the malware impact has happened on the request response, let's look at the context which is now we are evolving into that. Yeah. So before we get into that, this is a topic that account aggregator. So some of you may be aware of the account aggregator, but some of you may not be. So before I just talk about the issues with what we foresee or what can happen, account aggregator is the intermediary platforms which has been allowed by the RBI as the NBFC account aggregator guidelines that allows that intermediary to connect to the banks or the other financial institution. It could be mutual fund, it could be insurance provider, which are called FIPs, financial information providers. So intermediary allows to these partners, the data providers, and fetch the information and share with any third party who is requesting for that information for that customer. So it could be any financial information user. So one hand you have the financial information user and other is the providers, and it is actually an intermediary. But any financial information user can't fetch the data about yours. So here the intermediary is fetching the information about any individual so that the individuals can be provided customized financial solution. It could be the lending, it could be the financial management planning, or it could be any other services. Now the data can be exchanged, can be pulled out from the providers and shared with the users only based on the user consent. So that's a broad account aggregator model has been established. And what are the one of the things that has been specified, and that's where to enhance the security layer, that only the information can flow between the providers and the users through the end-to-end encrypted mode. That's really a big thing that has already been planned to it. Now look at that whole structure, that here that financial information provider is right now the custodian of all ours data. So my financial transactions, my deposit information, my loan information right now lies with the financial banks, or my mutual fund data lies with the mutual fund houses. Now it allows anybody to access that data. Once they access the data, it may again stored at their environment also. So it's not going to remain in that one environment, but it will percolate to the other environment also. So here that entire the flow is going to happen like one place somebody's the intermediary is asking for the consent. What if the consent get compromised? Then the data request has been happening from one flow to other. Now the entire mechanism has been established, the guideline has been specified, but if the right protocol is not followed, right guidelines not followed, it can have complications, because now through the, and all the communication are happening through the APIs. Okay, so there that you need to take care of this emerging environment. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Second aspect, so one was account aggregate, that was more on the liability side, where that only all information about your assets, your individual assets, your deposit information, your mutual fund. But what about the lending side of it? So lending side also, that recently India Stack has come out with a framework called OCEN, Open Credit Enablement Network, where it's trying to connect that lenders on one side and the borrowers on the other side with a mechanism that borrowers, any individual who want to access a loan, they can come to these platforms called loan service provider, and loan service provider connects to that lender using the protocol which has been defined by OCEN. Okay, so these are the guidelines. These are nothing but the protocols, but the APIs, that how the communication will happen from the loan service provider to multiple lenders. And this loan service provider, it could be Zomato, it could be Amazon, all these can be the loan service provider, where the borrower comes and requests for the loans which can be provided by the lenders. Now again, it's the entire things is been built on the open API architecture. Open API is again, it's an open, the word itself is said open, but there are definitely, and a mechanism is made available in form of the consent architecture, in terms of the security architecture, everything to ensure about the security. But it's about the individual organization, be it fintechs, be it the other startups or other intermediaries, and the financial provider has to work in tandem to make sure that the entire security layer has been intact without any compromise to data, because here it's all about, we are talking about the exchange of data. So let's look at that in this entire journey in the last 4-5 years, with the emergence of the smartphone, with the emergence of the internet growth, bandwidth growth, we have seen that massive uses in the fintech evolution and business evolution in the internet economy that we are talking about. And the emergence of the technologies also, that kind of the AI/ML growth has happened in the recent times has been amazing, or be it on the mobility, or be it on the bots, or be it on the automation. Now it has an impact on the cybersecurity landscape itself. Like now, the most of the time you can start seeing the breach in massive data breaches, that you can start reporting it because again, it's a third party is integrated with the multiple parties. People are collecting the data through the various means. The data are being stored. You are using in a various mechanism, like say for example in the big basket case, primarily you had the Drupal kind of the platforms too. Now any weaknesses are there in any of the platforms, it can lead to the compromise. So now we are seeing the massive data breaches, and very interesting things I would talk about it. Recently I was reading about one PT article where it was talking about the one agency which is gets an access to the dark web. Dark web is nothing but an abbreviation used in the cybersecurity world, which is a second part of the internet, where the informations are hidden, and you only need to find out a way to go to that dark side. And this entity, what it does, that they try to figure it out whose company data has been breached. And based on that information, they try to reach out to that organization and try to work out that, okay, I've seen that your data is available there. Your data has been breached. We can work it with you and provide you the necessary solutions. So that's there when the data breach has been really a massive. That there has been a complete change in the malware attacks. Like earlier, it used to be a very flat, straight malware kind of attack, but now we have seen the intensity of that attacks, like in the form of the ransomware, or it could ransomware itself is used to be transitioning itself so fast. Then we are seeing the multi-platforms kind of malware. Like it doesn't matter whether you are running on the Windows machine or whether it's your mobile phone. It travels from mobile to the Windows or the Linux device. It can anywhere. So that's kind of things. And then primarily targeted is that are you able to deny you the services rather than making a data compromise kind of things. So that's where the entire transitioning is seen. We are seeing all kind of organizational attack, be it as a small bank or be it in the fintech, be it in the startup, be it in the large organization. It's nothing stop that any company to get attacked. So that's why we have been seeing that massive shift into the entire attack pattern. Next big things is that use of the technology. So AI/ML has been used by the various security solutions provider. Definitely has been a massive changes has happened in the security solutions landscape. We talk about that signature-based antivirus to the algorithm-based antivirus to study the based on the pattern which is there on the devices. But now the cyber criminals are also using these technologies well ahead. Like phishing, all the phishings which are you can see, many of the phishing attacks are initiated by the AIML, like say for example, based on your individual's mobile behavior, your browser behavior, and then it's very targeted kind of the phishing attacks being done on your site. Or the training the bots to bypass the captcha, because now many of the organizations have tried to put it on the captcha whenever they're capturing the information, so that at least they try to figure it out that it's not the machine is doing. But now that they're training, the cyber criminals are training their bots to bypass this captcha. So that's kind of things that malware they're trying to be an AI driven, so that malware can change its behavior moment there has been a pattern to block that malware. So that's where the AI has been trained to change the behavior itself. So that's where we are seeing definitely we are seeing the increase on the organized nature of the cyber criminals. Some of you might have heard of the Lazarus group, which is nothing but the North Korea based, which has almost hosted 6,000 hackers, and which has been behind that many of the cyber attacks across the globe. You can see an ample of the information available on the internet around that. Then definitely now the biggest concern is happening that companies are allowing users to use their own devices. And definitely when employees start using their own devices, they don't have that kind of security mechanism on their own devices, the way organization will try to put the security layers on their organization's devices. So that's always a challenge. So you will have a balance. One side you have a secured environment, other side unsecured devices trying to have a communication. And this has been widened up with the post coming of the work from home. So now the people are working from their home and they need to connect to the corporate network. Yes, you have the VPN solutions. Everybody has been trying to put into the VPN, but still it's a risk because your device is still unprotected. Your device may not have the necessary solution in place. The communication layer may be secured through the VPN, but what about if your device is compromised? So those are the risks are there. That's a big transition is happening in the cyber security. Sorry. So how do you go about it? Very briefly, I just try to talk about that. How do you go about it?
Just for everybody's understanding, if you have any questions, please share your questions back on the chat. We will take those questions as we end our session, and we will spend time in each of these questions. So we are not in a hurry. You keep sharing your questions. We will not run the session for another not more than 10 to 15 more minutes. After that, we will take a lot of questions. So please go ahead and raise your questions back to us. We'll give you a opportunity to ask those questions. Second is we'll also share very soon a feedback form, maybe Malvika, if you couldn't do it. If you have any feedback, please provide on that feedback. So that's our only request. Chat pe if you can send your questions, and also if you have feedback, please give it on the form which we'll share. Back to you, Shashank.
Thank you, Samir. So this is that small framework that we have suggested, that when you're working into your trying to build your cybersecurity framework, this is the approach that you can look into that. And it's a very, very fundamental. So like, for example, first you need to start with the identification of your critical assets. And I tell you, this is the area where many of the organizations I've seen falling. Like say, for example, a couple of years ago, I was working with one of the retail store company, and they used to take this credit card or the debit card, and we asked them that, do you hold the credit card information in your premises, because then you automatically falls for the PCI data. And they said no, their database were not storing any data, and it was very clear. But when we started doing the study, we figured it out that for the POS machine where card was swiped, that machine, it was storing that data. So you never know that where that data is stored. Another example, many of the startups and the banks store the Aadhaar number. They use the Aadhaar number, but where the Aadhaar numbers are getting stored? Are you following that controls that needed to be for the Aadhaar numbers? Because definitely Aadhaar number can't be stored in the plain text in your database. You need to follow the guidelines which has been there in the UIDA. So it's important that you go about identify your assets, your infrastructure, how the communication happen between each of the infrastructure layer, be it on the database, how the applications are communicating with each other. Even more on the microservices, how each of the microservices are talking to each other, how the security layer has been communicated, how the authentication layer has been established between each of the communications endpoints. So you need to look at that, your set of the assets, infrastructure, and try to break down that what are the risks can happen, where the things can go wrong. So for that, you need to identify that what are the vulnerabilities are there. So when you have identified your assets, go for the gaps. There are various frameworks available for you to figure it out. What are the controls that I need to check upon? How do I check out the vulnerability? You can use that RBI guidelines as a reference, ISO as a reference, PCI DSS as a reference. and try to assess that, okay, your environment, that where each of the layer stands. So once you have done the identification, then definitely then you move into the definition. Then you can establish the right set of control. You can prioritize also, because many at the times it's not a critical asset. So you may not need to add that additional layer of the security the way your critical information, like say, for example, personal data. Now, moment the personal data protection law is also going to be around the corner, and it's really making a very serious kind of the security requirements to maintain that PDP data. And all the banks and every organization manage the PDP. So definitely your security level for the PDP will gonna be really very high. So that's why you prioritize the security controls. For example, like database encryption, that one of the important security controls that need to be done, but it's in a really in a massive exercise. So you may not need to do that database encryption for your maybe HR applications, but you may definitely require to do where your customer informations are stored. So you define the controls in terms of the policy, processes, pick up the technology solution. It may not be the OEM solution or the only open source. It can have the balance of the open source, OEM solutions, COD solutions. So that's why you can build it. And the most important is the awareness. And why awareness? I tell you that I'm not talking about, I was talking about the phishing attack. Phishing attack is really on the rise. I'm sure all of you during the work from home, you would have got an ample of the SMSs as well as the emails, which must be pointing you to either share information or to respond in a certain manner, which will make your either financial data compromised or any of your social media compromised. So phishing is remain that one of the major risks, and that can only be curtailed if individuals improve their behaviors. Individuals be aware that, okay, I don't need to respond to this phishing mails, able to identify such phishing mails, where to see that, okay, this mail has not come from the any pseudo kind of the ID. It has come from the any fake ID, and which is only just main ID is just impersonating it. So you need to be able to figure it out. So awareness is a critical component, and it's not a one time. You have to continuously keep on improving upon the awareness part of it. Continuously keep on checking the employees' level of understanding of the controls. And as I was talking about the way the cybersecurity landscape is changing, that's where definitely you need to continue to adapt to that awareness program. Then definitely once you have identified build the policy, processes, the technology solutions, go into the implementation in phased manner, and all has to work in the tandem. It can't happen that, okay, the APT, like advanced persistent threat or the antivirus application is working, but there is no monitoring mechanism has been established to against that. So here that device, your solution maybe keep on raising the alert, but how you're going to monitor them, how do you going to respond to that? That's where you need to implement all the processes, the tools in all the tandem. So you go about implementing the security controls across all the layers, the application layer, that your database layer, your network layer, your firewall layer, all interfaces, that all the controls has to be implemented. And the next, the detect, because then it's become very critical that you can't just implement and just sit tight, because it's not going to happen. And that's why if you look at detection becoming a very critical component into your entire framework. And that's where if you look at it, the RBI guidelines, which has been released for the cyber control for the banks to follow, and this is really a good framework which has been suggested and everybody can follow. It emphasized for the need for a dedicated security operations center at the bank. Why? Because the detections and the response mechanism has to be very strong. You're gonna get compromised. You're gonna get that phishing attacks happen. You're gonna get that some malware attack gonna happen. When we were in the bank, we used to see that kind of the attacks used to happen on our firewall. We used to see that what kind of the issues used to happen on the ATM side of it. So this will keep on happening. So you need to have a strong monitoring mechanism that you can try to identify those mechanisms and then able to respond. So maybe like you anticipate any kind of say virus behavior is being reported, how then you can curtail that? Even if like a phishing attack has happened, how do you ensure that none of the employees clicks on, or even if an employees have clicked it, how do you ensure that this machine gets isolated in case if it has got the attachment? Because many other times your phishing attacks will carry an harmful attachment which can compromise your device. So that's why you need to have the mechanism to respond. And the last, you can get breached. That's also accepted. It may has happened. I was reading somewhere. I was reading one of the FBI director old has made a statement that there are two kind of organization. One who knows that they have been breached, and other is who doesn't know that they have been breached, but all have got breached. So that's kind of mechanism. You may get a breach, but you need to know, figure it out that how do you respond back? How do you curtail the damage? How do you communicate in the industry, with the media? How do you ensure that your communication with your employees? How do you ensure that the damage doesn't get speculated, if it's a financial or if it's a kind of an operational, you should able to recover. Your DR arrangement has to be very strong, that in case if you need to shut down your infrastructure to curtail the damage, you should be able to recover it from the DR. So that's where you need to manage that, and that's a brief framework that we have been talking. And the last, just in the context of the open APIs, we have tried to list down some of the practices that can be followed. Some of you already might be following it, but that's where we just wanted to highlight as a summary that these are some of the basic principles, basic practices can be followed both at the banks and at the fintech end. And banks definitely, when many of the fintechs are looking for any partnership with the banks, these are the basic expectations they will have. So whether you are a bank or whether you are a fintech, definitely have a right cybersecurity policies, have some set of the processes, be it in change management, be it in the patch management, be it in incident management. Don't need to have a very complex, comprehensive kind of process, but at least in a basic outline that how do you going to work it on that particular processes. Set up your private networks to ensure that all the communications are then controlled. Build an API authentication mechanism, and not for the API also. So any third party who is going to consume need to ensure that API get authenticated, the partner get authenticated. If the partner app is making a call to your servers to consume the API, make sure that that partner app get authenticated. So there is a right set of the authentication mechanism has been established between these two parties. But over the top, make sure that the API headers itself doesn't carry those information. We have seen that kind of the wrong coding happen to that. Then since you are taking care of the authentications, traditionally static tokens are being used, but make sure that you use the dynamic tokens so that even if the logic has been compromised, you are not able to break down the entire service. So use a dynamic token. Make sure that very fundamental SS tunnel has been used, the right TLS protocol is being used, the payload encryption is being done, because we have seen the story of SSL also getting compromised. Now, this bit of the technical side of it, but we just thought that we just try to highlight as a summary that with respect to Open API, these are some of the practices which can be followed. There are lots, there are many, but we just wanted to highlight some of the key ones. So that's where we'll just take a pause, and then we just wanted to talk about. So this is that, as we have been speaking about that, we have training programs, and in our training program we teach what we learned from our assignments, our being on the ground, that what's happening. So this webinar is also an outcome of we working on open banking, we helping them in many of the fintech and the startup partners. When they are talking to the banks, bank expectations are being shared and helping them to understand, helping them to be ready to meet that bank's expectations. So that's where we build, and then we try to incorporate into our training programs. So we are coming with a cybersecurity on the 6th of December, where we try to go more details. So overall, like 6 hours of the programs is there, where we trying to go more deeper into cybersecurity fundamental, security as a part of the microservices architecture, because that's where the world is evolving. Then role of emerging technology. I touched briefly about the use of AI/ML, but that's going to be more on the wrong side of it. But on the positive side, how you can use those emerging technologies to strengthen your cybersecurity framework. Go into defense in depth model, where like entire that how do you build the security from the OS layer to the physical hardware, to the OS level, to the database layer, then to your application layer, the network layer, your internet layer. How do you build that security, and how it need to be burned in the so synchronous manner that any compromise has happened at one level doesn't percolate to the bottom left layer. So that's where. And also the regulatory, because where that massive guidelines comes from, be it on the RBI or any other regulators, what to follow on the cybersecurity. And from the industry experts, me and Samir, we primarily take some of this, most of the sessions, but we also try to get the industry view, because these guys are on the ground and have seen the world from the different ones, like Bharat Panchal, who was earlier an CISO, chief risk officer for the NPSCI, and sees very closely the risk in the digital payments space. And right now, currently, the FIS is, and so he will be taking more session on deeply on the payment side and the network layer side. And then Chetan Ganatra, one of the expert in the app security side. He's a certified ethical hacker and really a deep knowledge into that. And then a couple of more experts that we are trying to bring it and balance it out in a one day comprehensive programs. So Samir, that's where take a pause and then we can get into the question answer. Samir, you are in mute. Okay. I'm just trying to see.
Unmute myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me see if I can get my video up. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can hear that out.
Yeah. We can hear.
Yeah. So I think that was the framework which we wanted to establish. I have seen few questions coming in. And of course, the Malvika would have shared you a feedback form. My request is to please fill that up. This deck which we have prepared, we'll definitely share it back to only those or everyone who actually gives us feedback. So as part of the mandate, we'll give the feedback form, the deck itself. So please fill up the form. The deck will be given to everybody who fills those details. Now coming back to one of the question which is Nitin More is asking, how do you see AI-based credit decisioning work when ICR and AA in place for micro lending and micro insurance? I think I don't know if this question is more asked from a security perspective or business. If it is business, I think we obviously will handle it as part of our lending course. We actually just finished our lending course 2 days back. It was very tough. I think we had almost 26 hours of back-to-back training. But yeah, I think that's where we handle. But if it is more on security side, I would be happy if then you want to call out your question and then let's see if we can respond back. Nitin,
yeah, yeah, it was purely from the lending business perspective, not on the security side, because I think if we have AA in place, I think where the data resides and how the data is tapped, and then how do you see, because the data resides in multiple places and the customer is transacted at different points. So how do you analyze that data and correctly decide on what credit to be allowed or not? That's lending. And then obviously I think insurance also opens up, because that's a different field. But then, yeah, both this from the business perspective, actually.
Yeah, so so in fact, we were so much pushed in last few days. So we basically did a training only 2 days back, last Saturday, Sunday, which we had almost 50 plus parts. So we got so much of push because we are overflowing. We're bringing it back on 9th or 10th of January. So if you're interested, that's where we will handle. This is not the forum for that. Okay. That's why I'm not.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have had, so Sudhir, you can ask your question. Sudhir Prabhu, please go ahead and ask your question. Sudhir, you're there?
Yes, Samir.
Yeah.
You're able to hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, my question was around what are the best practices that we need to adopt to secure the APIs? Example, is tokenization the best approach with an expiry time set? I did see something on dynamic tokenization, but is it the best practice? That's one. And what is the best encryption mode to be adopted, whether something like a triple DES or whether it should go in for AES 256 or something better?
Okay.
And the last question, if you may allow, is does Open API Banking Framework define any specific guidelines around cybersecurity?
Yeah, thanks. So first question, so when we talk about the token as a best practices, it's one of the best practices, not all. So as I was talking in that slide, that you need to use the combination of it. So having a SSL in place between all the endpoints, both the endpoints where the consumers and the API providers is there. And then having the payload also encrypted. So entire the API, the communications is happening. You make sure that the entire payload is also encrypted. And if possible, that try to use the API gateway in place, because many of these API gateway comes with the entire the firewall kind of structure in place, which enhances your security layer when you are trying to expose your APIs. So it's all the combinations. You can't bet on that one only controls. So that's where there are the API practices. Second, on that using that encryption logic for the tokenization, I think both has been widely accepted, whether it's on the DES or the AES 256. Both have been widely accepted norms within the industry I've seen. And third is on the AES specification guidelines within the open banking. If you see European Union open banking, PSD2 or the UK open banking, they definitely specify guidelines around that the control mechanism. The proper technical security standards have been defined. While India, if you see, open banking is more the industry evolved model. So here you don't have any specific guidelines which has come from any regulator around the open banking. So you need to go back by whatever the guidelines or the regulations available, maybe like following the RBI cybersecurity guidelines which is there, or any other guidelines which is there.
And RBI has given enough guidelines, right? If you can follow those, then you are done, right? From a Gopal Krishnan to all the time something new keeps coming up. And they also have something on outsourcing side. A lot of things have actually cascading effect on each one of them. So when you do any open banking, you also have to follow that outsourcing framework as well, which includes audit process.
I have a question. This is Sridhar from Chennai.
So just one second. Just one second, Sridhar. I think Sudhir, your question is answered.
Yeah, thanks, Samir.
Yeah. Sridhar, we will take your question, but normally I would request everybody to put their hands up or maybe send
the reason is like in my laptop it's not even.
I now remember you also had the problem last time also. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, Sridhar.
So Samir, the security related part, the framework, RBI norms, conditions, that might be one way. We are not even talking about like some of the areas what we are going to concentrate on. This security will be like eSIM part. It is coming, like everyone knows about it. eSIM transactions might be more helpful than the web connectivity APIs. Even APIs also, it is easily connect via eSIM based. So the future, the technology might not be, RBM might not be covered that kind of a security framework, related forum, if it is available, then just guide me. We can plan to give the best, framework. What you developed is also one of the best framework. I'm not even saying that it is not a correct one, but a forum which can be, latest technology should be covered.
I think the framework, whatever you are saying is valid. That's what we all as a team try to keep doing it, saying that we share ideas, we share use cases. Idea is that for everybody to pick that up, and obviously industry level, it's finally industry from a banking perspective, financial services, RBI will mandate some of them, and we can actually create a structure by which we can reach out to them. So I think we have seen it all permissive, right? So I think the world is very different, right? So I like your point. I think we can also have a chat, maybe you and Sridhar, because Sridhar, you and Shashank can have, because security, he is an expert, I'm not the best. I would rather leave my thread more as a overall technology head and a CIO or maybe CDO position rather than the pure. So I think I will open up that thread. Shashank, you please have a quick chat with Sridhar on this. Yeah. So with this, we move to the next hand up is from Siddharth Purandare. Go ahead, ask your question, please.
Yeah, Samir and Shashank. So my question is similar to what Sridhar has asked about, industry standards, because, what we have seen from our bank side, we mandate 4096 bit certification, but a lot of players do follow 2048 bit certification. So because there is no standard body, so these things do happen. Secondly, similarly on that part, lot of our big players who are security aware, they ask for, user ID and password along with the API request. But 90% of the people are okay with whatever API calls are there. So for such kind of security conscious customers who gone ahead with a different level of security, what should be the standard practices across the overall ecosystem? Because if there is no regulatory body, we have to deviate from the 2048 versus 4096 debate and passing extra parameters in the API from the security standpoint. So those are some of the challenges that I thought that how in Indian ecosystem we should see that as a challenge, and how can we rectify that?
Yeah, rightly said, Siddhartha, and that's a challenge that, and I was talking about that. That's a challenge that we may have to continue to live with, because that's where that even the not only the security but overall at the API level, if you look at it, there's no standard defined that whether you are using the REST or the SOAP, or how the documentation should happen. The way it has happened in the international market, like Singapore, if you see, there has been a kind of a playbook by on the API by Monetary Authority of the Singapore or the UK open banking that I was talking about. But time will evolve. Definitely, the way we have seen the account aggregator, at least on the first layer, it has come out with it and how the API call should happen. How the API is, it has defined the API specification. So everybody is expected to follow the set defined of the API specification. So slowly and slowly, I'm sure that it will start moving towards the standardization, but it may take some time. And that's where that definitely we have a challenge.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, in fact, my request, as I said, please give your feedback, please share you the deck well. And your feedback is always useful because we keep planning more and more activities around the year. And it'll be useful to get that kind of feedback so that we can add new layers, new activities. Cybersecurity is a result of feedback from the market saying that you guys are talking so much about open banking, but why are we not talking about the security issues linked to it? So that's why we brought it up. In fact, open banking session ran for a year before we added the cybersecurity sessions post that. And today we work with a lot of such entities on setting up their practices on security side. So I think that's the point. Your feedback will be very useful. Just to be aware that we have a bunch of, maybe I'll share it on the slide. I'll not waste your time, but there are a set of activities we are doing on cybersecurity and open banking and digital lending. You can look at it. Now, I think I'll go to the next question. And Venkatesh, you have the question. Go ahead and ask a question, please.
So I want to know that how to identify whether devices are compromised security complaints. Like as Shashank mentioned, nowadays people are working from home using their own devices, or laptops are connected under through VPN or connecting different networks. So how to identify that whether devices are compromised? Are there any tools to identify such devices which are compromised?
So definitely, Venkatesh, good to connect with you after a long time. Definitely there are tools available. In fact, that's where the major transition is happening. As I was talking earlier, you also used to have a very standard antivirus kind of the programs, which used to work on the signature kind of pattern. Now you have an advanced threat solutions which primarily work on the AIML. So what it does that it looks into your entire network, including the devices, and including the devices which is connected through the VPN to your network. And what it does, it creates a pattern. It's created in a kind of the algorithm checking about what kind of activities are happening across the devices, be it on the server, be it on the network devices, be it on your desktop, or be it on the laptops. And any misbehavior being observed, be it because of the malware or because of any other reason, it's raised an alarm. And with along that, what is that misbehavior is being shown. So that's a good tools to explore.
Yeah, go ahead. So I think when I do this, I can't even see the chat bot, right? Chat box, right? Let me see if I can see some questions coming up remaining here. Anybody else? I think.
Yeah, Sumit has asked one question. Yeah.
Which Sushil, right?
Sumit Malhotra. Sumit.
Yeah. I can't see it, but you go ahead. Yeah. Sumit.
Yeah, even I had one. Okay, no, I'll go after Sumit.
Yeah, sure, Sushil.
Yeah. Hi, Shashank. Hi, Samir.
Hi, Sumit.
Hi.
So Shashank, in one of the slides, you mentioned something that, the banks are putting into private networks and even the developer portal. So just wanted to understand what do you mean by that? I mean, if you can elaborate.
So not very clearly, the private network, we're not talking about that entire the layer where that the whole API layer, including their internal the database or that application server. That's primarily they try to put it on the private network behind their firewalls. The developer portals also they put in on the internet layer to expose to the outside world. And that's what they do, try to create a kind of sandbox environment separately, which is being supported and managed by their API portal, but which may be outside their private network so that any individual can access those sandbox. Some of the banks try to put some kind of still a stringent mechanism for the identity authentication and make sure that the right partners are accessing that sandbox. But some of them try to relax lots of controls around that, which it may have on the UAT environment. UAT environment is still they try to keep it in their own private networks on behind the firewall with a high security mechanism, not as much as the production. But the sandbox they try to create and keep it separate with the relaxed kind of the controls. So that's primarily I wanted to say.
Oh, all right, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, Sushil, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just want to understand. Actually, we spoke about a lot of stuff around, what should be done. I just wanted to know if there are any known events in the recent history where these cybersecurity attacks have happened on the open API, and was there any fallout which could have been avoided because of by implementing a few things, if there is anything which is known?
Very specific any incident they keep on happening, but not sure on the top of the head any notable incident which can be called out at this instance. But definitely once we go and there are many. Yes, data breach kind of things gets reported very easily because it's becomes very open in the market. But these compromises, which is between the two parties, you may never come to know on the media.
Right.
Like, for example, recently the big basket case that was the media reported. But what happened that banks and the fintech is tied up, and if any API compromise or happen, it could be the wrong response also, right? But we will get to know about those incidents, Sushil.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and typically whenever new APIs layers are created, and I will not name for logical reason, when the new payment framework went up in the country, there were frauds of multiple kinds, right? And even today, a huge number of frauds happen around that platform because this is such an open framework, right? Your APIs are available, multiple apps are available from where you can actually do. So I think this is for a very long time, right? It's difficult to manage.
Yeah, I get which one are you referring to. Understood. Thank you. Thanks.
I think maybe as we run out of time, we are having the next question from. And again, please give your feedback. We've only received very few feedbacks. That would be good if you could. And of course, just one of the questions which I think the participants are asking is that all of that from an activity perspective, would you be covering security session? Obviously, we would. That's part of it. I don't want to belabor on that, but yeah, in that one-day session, definitely all security frameworks we will definitely capture. With this, we move to the last question. Arush, please go ahead. Arush.
So hi, Shashank mentioned that phishing attacks are on the rise recently. So I just wanted to know what kind of other attacks have been prominent or gaining prominence in gaining access to organizations.
So Arush, there are many, but if you ask me and whatever the information available on the internet, phishing attacks, post-phishing attack, it comes under malware attacks, which is more in the form of the ransomware. The data breaches are separate, which is like very more targeted kind of thing. But again, the ransomware or the malware attacks are again outcome of your phishing attacks itself, because many of the phishing attacks comes with these malwares attached to that attachment body. So these are the two has been prominent one, phishing and the malware attacks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And but it is so dark at times. So basically, for example, both of us, me and Shrikant. Now Shrikant gets a mail that and it's coming from my name that there's an urgent thing. Can you do this for me? Now, fact of the matter is that the tonality of that message is very, very close to how I write. And my writing habits are very limited. I don't put my name when we do one-on-one. It was exactly in that same tonality and all. It's just that, and he would have ended up sharing some details or money or whatever it is. He actually called, did you do this? In fact, that happened with Rajan as well, where I think the message went to Rajan that can you, there's an urgent thing, can you do it? And typically it goes in such a way that within the network, it appears that somebody knows within the company who all are operating, and they're trying to create that networks, and then within the group, if they can do the messaging, maybe they will be able to extract something out. It's that dangerous. I mean, it's so close. I also got from a third party, somebody got a mail in my name that I'm requesting them for some 25,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees. And the person actually asked, that was actually, the details were already given. I thought I will just remit instead of discussing with you. Why would you ask me that question, right? So it's that bad. It's prevalent all over, absolutely all over. Shashank, you want to quickly close and share some perspective on finally on the training itself, and then maybe in a minute's time we'll close.
So you want me to put it on the slide?
Yeah, I'll put it. So maybe I think one of the question I got just now is that can you just define what exactly will you teach in the session? And I just thought maybe instead of covering in like that, we can quickly cover it. So the question was, how would you sort of go in details of this? Yeah.
So as I was talking about that, we'll try to cover more of the fundamentals of the cybersecurity and that framework. As we were talking, we'll go more into detail about that whole identification process, that the implementation process, the detection process. That's where we try to spend more time of it. And then microservices architecture. So the way we were talking about that, how the architecture is being built, how the APIs are being written, what are the secure coding practices that need to be followed. So that's where we try to cover on the microservices architecture, more on the application security layer. And on the role of emerging technologies, so where we look into that AI, ML, how it's enhancing the security, what are the solutions are available which can help you to enhance the security, the bots kind of thing, RPA mechanisms, all these solutions, and some of the industry solution which has been built on these emerging technology we try to cover. Then again, one is very specific on the application layer, but we try to cover the entire layer where we cover about that how the security to be built on the hardware infrastructure level, your data center layer, then the operating system, be it in Windows or the Linux, what are the best practices need to be followed on the network layer, on the application layer, then database layer, because database is becoming all the critical. And now since we are talking about RDBS to the NoSQL kind of the database that we are moving, so how do you take care of the security around that? So that's where we try to get more detail into that. And then last but not the best, please, payments we try to cover on that very deep, that especially that what is the role of the network, how the payments landscape being evolving, what are the security risks are evolving into the payment, because everywhere it's all about, we are moving towards the digital payments. So that's where Bharat is going to take the deep session around that. And one session we'll try to cover very especially on the regulatory aspect. Now regulation has been released by RBI for the urban cooperative banks also. And they already have the guidelines for the NBFC. They have already have the guidelines for the banks. We try to cover what are those guidelines, what is the implication, and how do you go about it, ensuring that you follow that. And within that, we try to also cover that what does the bank expect when they try to partnership with fintechs on the startups, and how do they respond to that requirements. Yes, you are in mute.
I think I have a very unstable network today. So I think one thing which we have realized, and this is my personal experience, is that most times security comes in later. We are trying to ensure that in most places where we advise, we're trying to bring it upfront in the structuring itself, so that it just ensures that when you're going live, you're not under worry. And of course, the last question which Ravi was asking is that can you get the details? So I think just reach out to Rajan if you're interested in any of our courses. Of course, from a work perspective, and if you need any generic feedback on how it is, we can always reach out to Shashank. We are part of the ecosystem. We work with a lot of fintechs and a lot of entities. So open for any discussion. With this, I think Shashank, anything else, or before we can close?
No, only one request still for the people, and I think Samir will share the deck with the participant who provide the feedback, right?
Yeah, only those. So I think we've not got enough.
We've not got enough feedback, and that will help. So only the request that people can share the feedback.
Yeah, I think that's about it. So I think if you can give it, it's good. Otherwise, thank you for joining us, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to connect back with you for the next set of questions and next set of activities. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.